and welcome to today's session of the Natural Birth Summit. Today we're talking about creating a birth plan for natural birth. And we're fortunate enough to have Anna, the spiritual midwife, with us. Anna, hello.
Hi,
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
lovely to be here, Adam.
Anna is a midwife and natural birth expert, offering worldwide online natural birth support, courses, and coaching for women and their families. Anna also hosts a popular natural birth podcast featuring women all over the world. And she's also, a mentor for women who want to learn how to hold a safe, sacred, and physiological birth space and become space holders for birth through her program, the Spiritual Midwife Mentorship. Okay, Anna, thank you. Let's get started. And what we're going to talk about first is what really is a birth plan and why is it valuable?
What is a birth plan? Well, a birth plan is a woman and her family taking the time to really think about what their dream birth look like. You know, both the labor and the birth, the early postpartum, and how she's going to feel, what she's going to experience, who's going to be there, what place she's going to birth at, and what that looks like for her. You know, it's going to be different, the birth plan you have maybe for a home birth compared to a hospital birth or even a birth center birth.
Right.
And the value in creating a birth plan is truly both the part that is the visualization of your dream birth, which we know is very powerful, but also the research that you put in as you go from, you know, the early stages of labor, as you start niggling. You know, what are you envisioning for yourself in those early hours? What are you envisioning for when it gets more intense? Who's going to be there? What do you think that you want from them? And also, you know, if you then invite a care provider either into your home or you move to a birth center or a hospital, you know, what of their routine hospital or birth center procedures, routines, do you want to accept or decline? And, you know, in this process of researching this, you'll dive really deeply into what is the benefit, what is the risk, what are the alternatives to all that is offered throughout labor and birth from your care providers. And that's really, really important, especially if you want to have a natural birth. If you choose not to have a home birth, you know, even going into birth center, depending on that birth center, is it, you know, independent or is it connected to a public hospital? Because that will inform what kind of routine you know, hospital procedures they have, even in the birth center, you know. And this is something you know, you discover as you do your research, as you talk to your care providers. So this is a really important part of preparing for your labor and birth, especially, again, if you want to have a natural and empowering birth experience. It's claiming that birth experience by educating yourself and by making informed decisions and doing it all before you go into labor land. Because when you have the first contraction, you need to, you know, let go of your neocortex, your mind, drop into the primal birthing body, and you shouldn't be making decisions in that realm. You need to be in the birth bubble. And as soon as you go into your neocortex, your mind, you're taken out of your birth process. It'll slow things down, it'll interfere with the physiology. So the birth plan is to be very clear about what it is that you want and not want. Then obviously, you know, things happen sometimes in labor and birth that, you know, you flow with that. But this will really set you up that then you can give this birth plan to your partner, to your doula, to your midwife, to your doctor, to your care providers. And that will minimize the disturbance that they might otherwise come with in your birth.
Okay, so it sounds like the word there, claiming. You're claiming your birth, putting the time in to think through what's important to me, what is possible, all these things. That time is well spent, and is that. Can you just touch a bit upon benefits what benefits will mothers find when they make a birth plan, when they go through that process of engaging and researching and really unpicking their feelings about what they want and what's important to them? What will that give them in when they go into birth, into the process?
Mm. Well, I find, when I work with women, it's always a combination of, they take my courses, so they deeply understand the physiology of birth and how to optimize natural birth.
Yeah,
Um, and we work together with them about their preferences, which is, their birth plan, right? Deeply, so that I know and she knows. And in this process, as well as, listening to birth stories, watching birth videos, reading books, like we all get information in different ways, and we assimilate that information in different ways. For some of us, we're very visual, some are very more auditory, some love to read, or so on and so forth. But actually also taking all of those things in consideration and then putting it, actually writing it down. Journaling is really powerful. So it's the
yeah,
same thing here. When you've journaled it, when you've written it down, it's even more integrated in you. It's like it's a part of the process of really preparing for birth, is to go into the depths of the smallest things, because a part of you, we're modern women, most of us who birth are women, right, or identify as women. um,
yeah,
and so it's really it's really important that this process is claimed by her
yeah,
and not outsourced to someone else. And as she does that and she integrates in herself, there is this safety and trust in birth and in her body that just maybe listening to birth stories, or just maybe taking a course, I don't feel like that's enough. It is that embodiment that needs to happen, especially the first time around, because you don't know what's going to unfold.
right.
So taking that time to really sit with and visualize and dream up and, be in that energy, um, it embodies something for the woman in doing that.
Yes, yes. So you,
And it takes also
sorry.
her, sorry, so it also takes, it calms that very modern, busy mind, that monkey mind that we all have, that many times will interfere in the birth process for women. Fears
Right.
and anxieties and worries
Yeah.
in your mind takes you out of the birthing bubble, right? From that primal birthing realm. When someone asks you, do you want this or that? You have to come back up and you have to think. But also, if you haven't
Right.
taken these decisions beforehand and you don't feel like you really know what you're getting yourself into, like in the hospital, for example, if I've researched all the things they're going to offer me and I've been very clear of what I'm accepting and not accepting, and I know the alternatives, if something deviates and I have to make a decision, I've prepared myself, then that will not kick me out of my birthing process as much as it would if I just come
Right.
in naive, not knowing really what I'm going into, and then have to like be in my neocortex and like trying to birth a baby. You know, that
Yes.
doesn't go
Yeah.
together, right?
Doesn't go together. Right. Yeah.
So that's truly what it does for women. Both it just the whole thing, creating it will create a safety in her when she goes into the birthing realm, that she knows she's done everything in her control. Now she can let go. Like
Right.
there's
I
a
think
zing in her, but in the back of her head, a subconscious knowing, I've done everything I can. I've prepared.
yes. So
Right.
I think the word control is interesting, isn't it, in this situation? Because clearly you can't control outcomes. You can't control all the things that will happen in birth, but what you can control is how much you know and have informed yourself, and you can control what your statement of choices and preferences, and you can
100%.
prepare and brief your team. And these are the things that that you can use to give yourself every opportunity to achieve the birth that you visualized.
That's it. You know, the preparation is everything. You know, I'm a
Yeah,
midwife and I worked for so many years, especially when, you know, I was in the hospital system and also birth center sometimes, that women will come in without any kind of preparation.
right,
And sometimes that flows and it works well. But especially our modern minds, you know, we need that to calm that mind. We need that preparation many times, you know,
right,
so we can surrender into birth because we trust birth. You know, that is, the trust comes from understanding the physiology. And when you understand the physiology, you go, ah, my womb is amazing. Oh my God, I am designed for this. Yes, I
right.
can open. I don't have to be scared of this. And actually, the
Yes,
more I can remove fear from my body and mind and soul, the more smooth that process will go for me as well. And the more you understand, the more you trust the process.
right, right. Okay. Now you've touched on some of the things that should be in a birth plan. Could what are the most important things that should be in there?
Hmm. Well, it depends where you birth, I guess.
Yeah,
But in saying that, I always say, even mamas who have home births or birth center births, you should always have a plan B as well. I think
yeah,
not everyone agrees with me, but I guess it depends who you are. And the thing is, most home births and birth center births unfold perfectly, but a few will need transfer. And so I think that it is clever to actually know, where would you transfer to? What is that
yeah,
hospital's routine, hospital birth routines, procedures in even just physiological normal birth? But also, obviously, you know, what are their rates of cesarean, you know, all the different things. I think you should know your transfer hospital kind of a bit
right,
at least, to to not be, again, to calm the mind and go like, well, in worst case scenario, in quotation marks, if you're having a home birth or birth center birth, if we transfer, I have a plan for that. I know what I want from my partner, from my midwife. I know what I want and don't want, even in these different scenarios. I think that's very good. But, you know, what I always say to women is that in your birth plan, write it, you know, write out your dream birth. You know, for some, they want to have maybe dot points or, you know, 1, 2, 3, whatever. And some are more like, you know, write a story, you know. I don't say
right.
write like 16 pages. Don't do that. Maybe 2 pages, you know, maybe it's 2 pages or 1 page of just like painting a picture of what it is that you're desiring to experience, you know, what you're looking forward to experience. It's hard to say, you know, generally what to put in there because every woman wants different things. You know, for some, it's very much like it's important to her that she's going to catch her own baby, for example. You know,
Yeah,
that really needs to be in there, or like she wants her partner to do that. Um, so it depends on you and your desires, your wishes. I would, you know, when I work with clients at 36 weeks, we will sit down for a birth plan meeting. You know, we'll spend 2 hours or 3 talking through a birth plan, you know, creating it together. I've asked them beforehand to obviously have a an idea of that. Maybe they've already written out what they think that they want and so on.
yes.
And then I come in and we discuss it, and maybe I help them add something more, or, you know, we discuss the things that she has written down on her birth plan.
How important is it that the birth partner is at that meeting to discuss birth plan?
It is really important, Adam. You know, it's really important that the partner is as involved in this process as the woman. Many times they might not think it is, but it really is, because yes, the woman is the one that's going to birth the baby, but the partner's going to be right there beside her and experience a really life altering moment as
Right,
well. And many partners can feel like they don't know how they can support in the best way. You know, I've had many experiences of births where the partner might be in the corner, might not really feel a bit awkward, doesn't know how to support, how to help, feels in the way, thinks that it's the midwife's job to do everything. And, everyone's different. And, you find your unique way of how you can be a team and whatever that looks like for you. But it should be as empowering for the partner to walk into that birth space, feeling confident in the birth process, knowing that,
Right.
the woman can birth their baby and will birth their baby, and yeah, trusting in her body and also in her primal birthing wisdom as well. And the only way to get there is from learning about the process together with her, and then sitting down with their birth preferences, and going, what is it that we want to see for our birth?
Right. Right. Okay. What do you
And
say to people who um, who argue that a birth plan for a hospital birth is a little bit futile? It's, they've got their routines. They're very good at asserting those over your preferences. How would you encourage mothers who are thinking of birthing in a hospital that the birth plan can still be valuable?
I think it's essential for birthing in a hospital. But I very
Yeah.
much understand where these people who say this are coming from, um, because I feel 100% that if you walk into the hospital, you need a advocate and not your partner. You need a
Right.
doula, or, as the women I mentor, spiritual midwives, sacred birth advocates, you need someone in your corner that knows the hospital system and that knows ins and outs of the routines, and whether or not they're evidence-based, or whether or not they're actually there in that moment when they're offered for the safety of the mother and baby, or if it's just a
Right.
routine that the hospital just wants to do. Because what many people don't understand is that most routines in hospital, in maternity care, is not evidence-based. And when I say this, people don't believe me, because surely they wouldn't do that. But they do. And that is also, and what's even worse is that we see that the outcomes in hospitals are so much worse than in birth centers and home births. And that is because of all the interference and all the unevidence-based routines that are routinely done on women. And so the birth plan is essential, going through and understanding absolutely everything that they do in hospital and why they do it and what is the benefit of that. Is there even a benefit? Some of the routines,
Right.
there's no benefit, there's only a risk and an alternative. And so, that is why, especially with going into hospital, you need a birth plan, and you need to have communicated that birth plan with, hopefully you have employed a doula or someone that can walk in with you as a sacred birth advocate. You should not
Yeah.
put that on your partner. And I understand it's a cost to have someone with you,
Okay.
but you
Yeah.
shouldn't put that on your partner, because at the end of the day, this is also a very emotional, life transforming event for your partner. And he or she is not educated in the system. Is not, you probably as a mother will know much more than he or she will ever do, if they're not like
Yeah.
super duper birth nerdy, which most partners aren't. And at the end of the day, if someone says to you, oh, we have to do continuous monitoring on your baby, that's our policy here, and it's for your safety, it's for the baby's safety, and you decline that, and then I say, oh, well, your baby's going to die then. Because this is the language that sometimes they do, right? That baby card is thrown
Uh,
here and there and everywhere. That,
yeah.
your partner's not going to go like, we don't want it. They're going to go, oh, dead baby. And you too. Oh, because this is sometimes the coercive language that they do use in hospital. And you need to be aware of that.
Right.
I just had that recently 6 weeks ago. I walked in with a couple and they declined the antibiotics for GBS. And the midwife, said to me, oh, you know what? If the baby dies, then and I said to her, you know what? It's 1 in 17,000 chance that if that baby contracts GBS, that it will die. They're happy with that risk. The opposite, the antibiotics have higher risks for them and their
Right.
babies. Totally totally destroying their microbiome, both baby and mama, and affecting the immunity for that baby. So that's their choice. They're taking that risk. They think that that risk is okay for them to take. But that's the conversation I had to have, and I was their protector. They didn't have to have that conversation with her.
Yes,
He
yes. So
didn't
is it
say that to her.
so
And
for
that's because I
a
knew with the birth plan, I had the birth plan, and I said, this is their wishes. This is what I'm talking about with the birth plan. It's not a legal document, but it's almost like I can hold that up and go, this is their wishes.
yes,
This is what they've
yes,
decided. It's not my words as their, sacred birth advocate in that moment.
yes,
I'm not the bad guy here. I am the messenger. This is what they want. And you need to
yes.
stay out
But
of their room.
you're more than just a messenger. You're a highly informed messenger, aren't you?
That's
So
it.
you have information. You have some detachment from the emotional roller coaster of the birth process, which the birth partner doesn't have. So there is a particular a special place there, isn't there? I think that's what you're saying that can really help
Yeah,
in preventing the policies overwhelming the choices of the mother.
that's it. And
Okay.
especially during the birth process. So, in the whole creating a birth plan, it's so, so important. But I think actually having a birth advocate with you, especially in hospital, is super important.
Yeah.
If you don't have a private midwife that comes with you into the hospital.
Right. Right. Okay. Yes. And so, what are the things that you would advise people to not put in a birth plan? Is there anything that doesn't really have a place in a birth plan or is unhelpful to the process?
I don't have anything on top of my mind. I would just say
No.
that, you know, if it can fit on one page, great. I
Yeah,
think
concise
that,
is good, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah. And I think that it's essential. Obviously, maybe it's a bit longer as well if you go into a fragmented model of care where you don't know anyone on shift. But if you do have a known care provider, then it's essential that you speak to them. That they already know. You come with it, but
Before you go
it's
in,
really
you've
it's really
already
the
shared it.
meeting. Yeah, it's really the
Yeah.
meeting before where you talk about things. We go like, I do not want to have any vaginal examinations throughout my labor and birth if it's not medically necessary. I don't want to have the routine ones. And then the care provider might go, oh, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, and these are my reasons. And then you go, well, maybe I need to change care provider. Having this discussion also really shows you if you're in alignment with your care provider.
Right.
Home birth,
Right.
birth center, hospital, doesn't matter. Your home birth midwife might have also routines that she wants to do for her to feel safe in her practice, or she imagines that this is how she needs to conduct her, how she approaches safeguarding your birth. That might not align with you. Just because it's a home birth midwife doesn't mean that she will be the midwife for you.
Right. So
And a
having a
birth
birth
plan is
plan,
great. Yeah.
yeah, because it helps to tease out any potential conflicts before you actually arrive in labor, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
therefore you can choose, okay, am I going to accept that there's a conflict here, or am I going to find another provider? And
Exactly.
yeah,
So
okay.
can you see now how important the birth plan is and why I'm an advocate for it?
I'm convinced. I'm actually thinking back to my first child's birth, which is a long time ago. And I think we had a plan and it was a good plan, but we didn't use it in the right way. And we struggled to keep that space that you're talking about to allow that to be realized. And that's very interesting.
Yeah, that is why
Fantastic.
it really goes so hand in hand with the sacred birth advocate by your side,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, as you walk into that realm. If you haven't found an independent home birth midwife or birth center birth midwife that's independent, that that you share exactly the same views as you go through the birth plan. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
need someone to advocate for you so that it does unfold the way you want it.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we move on?
Just create a birth plan.
Do it.
Do it. Absolutely.
Okay.
Claim your
Fantastic. This is
birth.
claim your birth, and that's been, that's a theme. There's been a lot of that kind of language in the summit, and it's, I think getting across to the people coming, the mothers coming to the summit have already chosen to be curious about natural birth, haven't they? Because they've responded to the title, Natural Birth Summit. And I hope that this session, along with the other ones, gives them a pathway which they can explore what's important to them and what other research they need to do, so that they can realize the birth that they really set their hearts on.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Anna, this has been great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. What can people do if they want to learn more about you or from you, and what sort of things can you say to people as next steps?
Well, I very much invite you to come and visit me at the naturalbirthcourse.com. If you
Okay.
do want to have a natural birth, then maybe the natural birth course is for you. I also have the nourishing postpartum course that goes together in the bundle. I also have a beautiful village, which is a community, an online community for women who are natural and conscious minded, where I go live every month for Mama's Q&A, where you can ask me everything and anything about pregnancy, birth, and beyond, as well as sharing circles. And of course, as you
Fantastic.
mentioned, I coach all over the world. I help women create their birth plans. I also work with fear or anxieties when it comes to birth, which is so normal to feel fear around the unknown, which is birth, and the huge rite
Of
of
course.
passage that is birth. So I
Yeah.
help women work through fear release techniques. I work with birth trauma healing because unfortunately that is quite widespread in our modern birth culture.
Yeah.
And I have big packages. I have just 30-minute of one-off consultations, so anything in between there. And of course, as you mentioned, I also do mentor women who want to work as sacred birth advocates and space holders for birth. And yeah, we
Right.
are right now just open this week for enrollment for our start in May, the 15th of May, 2023. We start the
Okay.
program, the mentorship program. And you find all that
That,
information over at my website, the naturalbirthcourse.com.
and those programs, that the mentorship program, but also the courses, they're available online, and then you
Yes.
work in person as well. Is that right?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do assist some few selected families a year. I attend birth and I'm their spiritual midwife. But I'm moving more and more into the space of teaching others, mentoring others, and also
Education. Yeah.
worldwide. Yeah, I'm very passionate about that because as a midwife, I've seen that it's such a need for women to actually
Yeah.
claim their birth, reclaim this for themselves, instead of walking into a system thinking that they're going to be cared for. And yeah, 1 in 3 women experience birth trauma in that system, 1 in 20 PTSD. So I am very passionate about protecting and supporting women in not ending up being one of those statistics.
Absolutely. And there's lots of opportunities, lots of ways people can engage with you. Thank you so much, Anna. This has been great. I'm going to wrap this up now, and really appreciate you sharing these things about birth plan. And you convinced me. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Adam.